So Mark Carney just came out and really said in Key and Peele fashion that Canada ain't gonna be nobody's bitch. So let me break it down in real speak. I love the fact that Mark Carney just called out the world's biggest lie in Davos. He said that all the countries in the world have been like that shopkeeper putting up signs for rules we know don't exist anymore just to get along. And we know that that shit is for real. Nostalgia is not a strategy. His message is that the old world is dead and that we need to stop trying to fix it and build a new fortress. And that's exactly what Canada is going to do. And he's not just throwing out talking points. He flatly rejected the US takeover of Greenland, calling it economic coercion. He says that the world powers need to choose a third path, and that third path is a web of middle powers from the Nordics to India. Canada is fast-tracking $1 trillion to own the AI and energy supply chains, and because if you can't fuel yourself, then you're not sovereign. And the last thing that he said is when you negotiate a loan with a hegemon, you're just performing sovereignty while accepting subordination. Don't tell me that the world is not on their knees at the mercy of a madman. Middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, then we're on the menu. Who's this guy's speechwriter? I don't care if you don't like Mark Carney. That speech was something that needed to be said. Mark Carney, that speech was mad dope. I am a proud Canadian.
It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading.
See, it's not just me who's been saying that. A lot of people have been saying that the post-World War II rules-based order of the world is coming to an end or it's gone. And a lot of people are applauding what Mark Carney did, which was, pragmatic and candid, and people are calling it visionary. It's honest. It's at least an honest statement from a world leader, which is not very common these days. But what he's actually doing is a lot darker than a lot of people are noticing, especially the people who are applauding what he said. I think people are mostly just applauding because it's refreshing to hear clarity like that, at least an honest take about how the New World Order works. So I think that they are giving him a little too much credit because what he's doing is actually pretty dark. Basically, it's that everything you've ever been taught about the foundation for global stability was never real. It was a story or a narrative, right? He called it a pleasant fiction. If you think about that, that means everything you've ever been told your entire life about war justifications and sanctions and economic interventions, about how it's all defending a predictable system that makes the world go round, now openly being admitted to by a world leader a Western world leader at that it was all theater, mostly theater. And the consequences of that theater over the years have been what? Millions of lives lost, hundreds of thousands of lives, economic dislocations, conflicts like, the war in Ukraine that's still going on right now. There's guys in the trenches right now. Completely avoidable damage. Now just casually erased with thunderous applause. And then he says something crazy. He says, don't worry, I've got a solution for you. This is the same central banker who basically was installed as the head of Canada. A man who spent decades shaping that world order that he's now saying was all bullshit, right? Guiding global finance, helping enforce the very structures that he now calls completely fictional. Why on earth would anyone trust him to fix anything, right? The fix is not a rules-based replacement. It is a patchwork of middle powers trying to play strategic games in a world where the strongest dictate reality. That's his solution. Yeah, if you watch the whole thing or if you see other people's breakdowns, he's talking about strategic autonomy and shifting alliances and this kind of thing. But what that really means is that countries like Canada and much of Europe are now expected to hedge their bets with whoever has real power, whether that's China or Russia or whoever, right? And given the current world, that's a not so thinly veiled nod towards China. I mean, I've made videos about this ad nauseum. A violent authoritarian state as the ultimate pivot point. That is not a real solution, folks. It is surrender masquerading as, pragmatism. The applause for this guy's speech is actually a little bit surreal because people People are cheering the admission that the system failed, as if acknowledging that collapse somehow counts as leadership. It's not leadership. What he did is he laid out a roadmap for navigating a world where strength and not rules dictates all the outcomes. So it's a message that he sent to the middle powers, as they're called, right? To adjust and align if you're going to survive. And all the people that are clapping, they think that this is hopeful for the world. It's not. This is a warning. Stop clapping. Carney actually did a masterclass here in framing, right? He admits the old system was a lie. He makes himself the guide for the new chaos, and everyone's nodding along like, oh yeah, the central banker's right. But the new chaos that he's guiding them into is the same one the old system created, except now it's, backed by the strongest emerging powers, China foremost amongst them, to whom Canada, by the way, is basically a vassal state at this point. So China will now decide who lives and who bends the knee. Okay? I don't agree with that. That's not the best possible outcome, Mark Carney. It's an interesting speech. It's a little bit unexpected to hear a Western leader speak in these types of terms. It's bold, it's very candid, but it's also extremely dark. And the man who is being applauded right now, he just told the world, he just told everyone in his own country and everywhere else in the Western world that the rules were never real and they never applied. And the fact that they went along with it was to get along with it. That way they could benefit from it. But now that they're in a position where they might not benefit from it, now he wants to do what you do in Monopoly and flip the board. He just told everyone that you are completely on your own and that self-interest is the name of the game. What have I said before? Do you think there is a possible reality where the Chinese do anything that's against their self-interest? Anyway, I don't like Mark Carney. He's a central banker. I don't trust him. After Norm Macdonald died, the only Canadian I really care about is Carly Rae Jepsen.
We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful, and American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals, and we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
Why is Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney declaring that the rules-based world order is gradually ending? And what does he mean when he says American hegemony is declining with it? During his historic 4-day China visit in January 2026, Carney explicitly referenced a new world order, new world order, in his Beijing speech, signaling a fundamental shift in global power dynamics. He stated that the post-1945 international system is losing its relevance, and that Canada must adapt to a multipolar world where American dominance no longer guarantees stability. Carney's comments reflect Canada's strategic repositioning. After a devastating trade war with Trump that saw 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, Ottawa has moved closer to Beijing. China has become Canada's second-largest trading partner, with bilateral trade reaching $98 billion in 2025, despite previous tensions over Canadian detention of Huawei's Meng Wanzhou. Carney's New World Order rhetoric is both pragmatic acknowledgement of shifting power and a subtle rebuke of Trump's America First policies that damaged traditional alliances. The Canadian leader is not alone in this assessment. Multiple think tanks and former leaders have echoed similar sentiments. Former Canadian Prime Minister Jean Chrétien described Trump's election as a grave error that signaled the real end of the American empire in his 2018 memoir. The Atlantic Council argues that while US decline is real, thinking it's irreversible is irrational pessimism. Chinese state media has amplified Carney's message, with Xinhua highlighting his call for a multipolar world that respects different governance models. The rules-based order established after World War II, dominated by US institutions, global trade rules, and military alliances, is being challenged by rising powers like China, internal American polarization, and transactional diplomacy from leaders like Trump. Canada's move reflects both economic necessity and strategic hedging. Carney's public declaration isn't just diplomatic talk. It's a warning shot that America's closest allies no longer assume US leadership is stable or reliable. When a Five Eyes member and NATO partner openly embraces a new world order in Beijing, it signals that the West's unified front has fractured. This isn't about anti-Americanism, it's about survival in a world where American hegemony can no longer be counted on to maintain the old rules. What do you think? Should Canada embrace a multipolar world and distance itself from declining American hegemony? Or is this just a dangerous strategy that abandons decades of alliance stability for uncertain new partnerships? Drop your thoughts below.